I may have hit that a bit early. Whoops. Ruined everything. Set it all on fire. Just quit now. Welcome back to Infinite Musician Television. I'm your host, Dan Weiss. The guy that does the things with the music and the talking. Also spends a little time at M-File Music Theory and Songwriting, where we are all about helping you find your musical passion and power while helping you become the musician that you are supposed to be. Today is going to be a little bit of a short one. We don't have an interview today. And I know everybody's probably saying, like, you took last week off, you bimbo. And that's true. It was definitely needed. I've been firing on all cylinders and against my own good judgment have been completely burning myself out. I've got a lot done over this summer, but the quality of the work that I am getting done now is starting to suffer. So I need to be thinking about my longevity and my health and pulling back a little bit on the amount of content that I am producing so that I can actually get some things together. And one of those things we are going to be talking about shortly. We've got a new cool release coming up in about just under a month. If you thought that the chord progression formula book was cool, what's that? What was that again? Oh, just 100 chord progression formulas, how to beat writer's block and start writing your next song without waiting around for inspiration. You know, that whole thing. Oh, where might you find that? Why, at chordprogressionsbook.mfile.ca, avid listener. So, we put this book out, and to my surprise, people have been buying it, which is awesome. But we also had another book in development for quite some time. And we are nearing completion. We're just dotting I's and crossing T's and putting resources and things together. But we're going to be talking a little bit about that later. We're going to be talking about some more tips for how to make money with your music. Like I said, that was going to be a bit of a continuing thing for the next few weeks. And we are also going to bring in some guitar advice. I talk a lot about how easy it is to just kind of skip over music theory when you're playing guitar, but then you realize that you screwed yourself over and you hit a plateau, and then it's like, okay, well, shit, what do I need to do? So we're going to talk about a few of the things that are like must-haves to really get a grasp on your guitar playing. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about me, obviously. Me. We're always talking about me, aren't we? My past, my struggles, my story. Oh, so epic. So, years and years ago, starting guitar and really trying to push myself with it and always knowing that I wanted to play, obviously. I put a lot of work in, so I was able to kind of advance fairly quickly within a year or two of, really pushing at it and working at it. But one of the big things that really pushes you as a musician and a songwriter is playing with other people and being able to kind of jam with other people, trade ideas, try and get in with people that are better than you. so that you are always, you got to keep up, and you get a bit of an idea of where you need work, because when you play with people that are better than you, you get your feet kind of held to the fire a bit, and it shows you like, wow, okay, that's lacking, or they might do something crazy. You ask them a few pointers and you hit the woodshed. Get back to work on what you need to be doing. But, coming from a small town, Sarnia, it's like a big small town, but there's not a whole lot of people. So there isn't a whole lot of opportunities to really play music, not like in Hamilton, pre-pandemic. And there wasn't a whole lot of different people to jam with, especially, like high school, coming out of high school. I had a few people that I would play with all the time, but it wasn't like it was readily available all the time. And then during my wait to get into music school, I was home, and everyone else that I really knew was away at college and university. So I lost a lot of that, and I felt kind of trapped. I was just sitting in the basement, writing tunes, trying to progress my playing and everything, but I felt like there was a bit that was kind of lacking, So I wanted to be more confident in my music, write really awesome stuff that was fun for other people to play over. Obviously, that would be a really good draw if you were able to get in a good musical situation and you were like, oh, I've got these cool tunes. If somebody falls in love with them or thinks that they're really interesting or fun to play over, then you've got them. And now you've got a musical partner, or you can start building on a unit, right? And then now you're building your musical community. And I really wanted to be able to just get into those situations and make the best possible choices in any musical situation. Just gain really full fluidity on my instrument, on my guitar. I knew that I could be getting better, but I wasn't really sure what it was or how to get there. Like, and stop me if you've heard that before, or if that's resonating with you. Like that's something that I feel a lot of musicians, as they're progressing, they hit those plateaus. We talk about this all the time. You hit those ceilings and you're just like, okay, I'm not even sure what's blocking me. How I'm hitting an obstacle, and there doesn't seem to be a clear, indicator of what I need to improve on. So you start hitting those walls, and then you start worrying, like I did, that I would be unable to get any better. Maybe I wouldn't be able to make something really unique or new, or figure out like, well, what do I do? I don't know. Maybe I'm stuck here. Maybe this is my limit. Now it's just going to be stuck at this level, kind of doing it as a hobby, and that is not where I wanted to stay. So I got in a bit of despair, really, about how big a gap there was between my own playing and the choices that I could freely make while in a musical situation, and the music that I was listening to, the music I was studying, the music that I loved and was trying to figure out. There was just such a huge, obviously a gap. I said that already. Obviously my words are failing me. I'm a little tired. But you listen to music and you start learning about new music, and you're like, whoa. There's that inspiration that comes, but there's also that existential dread that kind of comes with it, where you're like, I don't even know where to start. What is this that's happening to my ears? So, luckily I was able to find more experienced people to play with, or eventually getting into music school, finding new people to play with, and getting into these new situations and experiencing new things. Well, now I'm really realizing how limited my chops were. I wasn't always able to convey a ton of different emotions or colors or flavor in my chords. I felt like I spent a lot of time focusing on certain things, and I started realizing that I wasn't really expanding my color palette, I guess you could say. I was really into certain types of music, so I was mimicking this music. And then when I got into other situations, I realized that this isn't a one size fits all approach to the guitar. And that made me realize how limited I was. So I started realizing as it comes up, it wasn't just wailing guitar solos all the time. And that's an easy trick. It's very sexy. It's what is put out there. These images of guitar gods just being able to shred effortlessly. But what is happening? What else is happening on the guitar? What else do they do when they're not soloing? Like, you may be surprised to find out that most guitar players that are like up there, you consider so technically proficient, you ask them like, how do you get good at soloing? Become a really good rhythm guitar player. Everyone will tell you that. Think about what's being played underneath. If you want to get really good at the saxophone, if you want to get really good at the trumpet, you can't play chords on those instruments, but you learn everything you can about chords, about how they work, how they move, different ways you can put them together. I mean, Pete Townsend, he considered himself strictly a rhythm guitar player. I remember I was getting really into The Who in my time just before going to music school. I just had a really big Who phase. And yeah, he considered himself a rhythm guitar player. And I'm thinking, like, he's the only guitarist in the band. So how wasn't he the lead guitarist? But it got the wheels turning. The gears were in motion. And I was like, he's the only guitar player, but he's calls himself a rhythm guitar player. And I've heard him solo. He's really good. But it started making me think about the power of the guitar player who knows their chords and knows their place in the band as a rhythm guitarist, as a support piece. Like, sure, you want cool solos, that's fine. There's nothing against that. But you can't be standing in front of everybody all the time. There's a time and a place for that. That's fine. But when it comes to songwriting, when it comes to playing with other people, you can't always just tell them, okay, you stand directly behind me and I'm just going to wail crazy wah licks, soloing, all kinds of stupid shredding, and you just support me. Like, not everybody's super cool with doing that. Not everybody wants to be your doormat. It's a lot easier to get into different musical situations when you can give them a boost. You know how to support the band, other people, when they get a turn. People like getting that leg up. It's as much, it works in friendship and social situations. It works in music as well. How can you bring something to the table that isn't just look at me, look at me? So the idea of rhythm and harmony and chords and stuff on the guitar, they started to become more apparently important. And I already knew they were pretty important, but it was like, okay, I gotta learn my shit now. So it was time to learn as much as I could about all the different types of chords, all the ways to play them, what I could add, when to do it, as I possibly could. I started working out different shapes to play on the guitar. I started experimenting with chords and chord movement, trying to play leads and melodies with chords. Like, this was something that really started coming a lot more in focus as I was getting into the live album, Dave Matthews and Tim Reynolds, live at Luther College. Two incredible guitar players. And one is more of a rhythm player and one is more of a solo player, but how they're both approaching the guitar is very both. The rhythm is the harmony, or sorry, the rhythm was the melody, but the melody was also like the harmony. Like, it was very interchangeable. And learning these things, like, I got a book that was all the different guitar parts and everything, and I just start lifting it from these books, and it just changed the way that I was looking at the guitar. I was like, these guys are playing the guitar like a piano, like that fluidly. There was such a disconnect between me and my instrument. I was stuck kind of thinking about it one way, and this was an entirely new way to go about it. So as I started learning all of these things and trying to pick things out from it and try and use them in different situations, I started realizing, like, the problem here is there's so damn much of this. There are so many different types of chords. There's all this, there's that, and I was clueless about how to really use them. There were so many resources out there that seemed comprehensive, but they were really disorganized and they were hard to use. And, I'm trying to use these things and I'm clueless about them, and I was completely misunderstanding a lot about context. And some songs, experimenting with things, they sounded kind of cool, and a lot was just really awful. It wasn't really, coming together in a way that sounded like I knew what I was talking about with my music. So there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of exploring how I can use harmony in different ways on the guitar. And coming out on the other side of that, I don't play weak chords. I don't play random crap that doesn't fit with the rest of the song because I know what notes are in my chords. And that makes a huge difference. Being able to put your hand down on the fretboard and pick a note and know all of the choices that are around it. So in that kind of way, you can really play along with anyone in any situation. I can competently accompany myself. I can expand my solos when I play them because it's not just, okay, here's a pentatonic pattern and I'll just rip around this a little bit. Because you can start to complement yourself with it, and you can start to think about using different notes and thinking about different chords and what would be in those chords while you're soloing. So it's like kind of implying a certain chord and a certain sound with your playing. And you can start playing your chords with movement, with melodic intent, with purpose. You can have your chords not just be jumping all over the place randomly. Now you can start to think about, okay, well, if I use this and make an inversion of this, it's smoother leading and it sounds kind of, more in the background. So I'm more supportive. Like, there's so many different facets of how you can just use this as a benefit when you're playing and when you're writing. And let me tell you, people, it blows their mind. People love it when you can literally just jump in with them. They're like, do you know this song? It's like, nope, but I will. And you just kind of follow them and, okay, it's this chord, and you play around with it. And it sounds like you're fucking genius. But, maybe to someone who's uninitiated, it's the same as if you don't know how a magic trick works. But there's a few simple things that when you pick it up and you know how to do it, then everything falls into place. And now you have mastery over your instrument. So learning about your chords and all kinds of how to build them, how to use them, what you can get at from any place on the guitar fretboard is just so important. So when I got there, I had the authority to just make the right choice. And even when I make a mistake, I know how to sound like I meant to do it. And again, everybody just thinks you're a genius. I mean, it's a good position to get yourself into. These kind of things work for more than just guitar. Like, these are facets of learning harmony that every musician should really, really know about. But I knew that coming as a guitar player from my humble beginnings, I knew that there was a lot to be desired. Hi, Bence. You bastard. Say hi to the camera. Yes, good kitty. So, coming from being a guitar player, I knew that there was a lot to be desired from trying to learn about this stuff and break through from, being stuck. I didn't want to just chase my tail, spin my wheels, go in circles, find these books that are supposed to be the ultimate answer, and then they're not. And you're just like, oh, here we go again, It was frustrating. So I knew, okay, what would I do if I could go back in time and give myself a book when I was starting guitar? What would that book be other than, the chord progression formulas book, which is a good one? But really mastering the actual instrument of the guitar, what would I do? Maybe one of these. Transform this. Boom. Look at that. The M-File Guitar Chord Encyclopedia. I've been working on this bad boy for almost a year now. And what we're going to put in this thing, it's going to take you from the basics of building chords, talking about the different intervals that go into them, what types of chords there are, how to use them, and then we get into the actual resource, the meat and potatoes of the book, which is all kinds of pictures and chord resources for every type of chord, every type of chord shape in each type of position. It's based off the caged system, open chords. Everybody knows open chords. That's some of the first things that you learn on the guitar. So we use that as like a starting point. So each type of chord shape, C, A, G, E, D, then we run through every type of chord that you can get in that position. We do go through inversions, we go through everything. So what we want you to be able to do is you can flip through this book one page at a time and start running through all these different chord shapes and trying to improve and get better and just figure out what's going on. We also want you to be able to, I'm learning this song. It says like E minor 9. Well, you can look up minor 9 chords and you can find all these different ways to play it. So you can move that E minor 9 chord all over the fretboard if you want. So it really has two different things where it's like an index, but it's also just a massive resource of like, here's everything. We want to make it as easy as possible for someone who is learning to really, progress and learn more. Sometimes you get to that certain point and you hit that ceiling. It's about taking the obstacles out of your path for you. Like the best thing I can do is bring a student to the point where they don't need me anymore. That's really the purpose of this company, M-File. Like, hopefully there will always be people that want to learn more about music so I can keep making money and keep a roof over my head. That's nice. But the actual goal, the mission, the purpose of this is to not keep you stuck. We want to get you to where you want to be and beyond where you ever thought you could be. Faster. Every time. We want to get better. We want to know exactly what things to take out of your way. So, as a guitar player, having a solid book that's actually like well laid out and explains how to use the chords, how to build them, like not just some pictures and leave some things out. And you know, I want you to be able to really just, like I said, you have a chord type in mind maybe, and you've just flipped through, okay, we've got dominant chords here. And then you've got all the different types of variations and all the crazy extensions you can add on them and inversions of the chords. Like, it's going to be mental. So we are gearing up to launch this book October 12th. Mark that shit on your calendars. I'm going to be going crazy trying to finish everything and get all my ducks in a row and get a website up and running so you can buy this book. But we are going to start pushing hard to get you guys pumped and excited about this book coming out. So you want this book? You can get this book. You got a friend you think would really like this book? Maybe a birthday or Christmas present? Or maybe you're thinking, you know what? I don't want to be alone on this musical journey, so I'll get one, and I'll get one for my friend. I mean, I'll be happy because that's 2 sales in one, but you'll be happy because you have someone that you can now go on this learning journey with. You don't have to, struggle alone. And being able to bounce ideas off each other and be like, oh man, page 183, I saw this awesome chord shape. Let's try to use it in a song. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I'm super excited that this is finally coming to fruition because it's been a lot of work, somewhat sporadic because I've had to, take breaks on it and focus on other things within the business, which is another thing that just, it makes me mad that I'm the only guy right now. That's one thing we got to totally fix because I want to be able to focus on putting more things out there to get you guys the help that you need. So October 12th, Guitar Chord Encyclopedia from M-File will hit the airwaves and we'll start shipping those bad boys out. Hopefully next week, maybe we can get like a pre-sales page and start getting a little bit of a contest going. Again, I've been kind of a mutt recently, just really burned out. So I'm not up to date as I want to be, but that's life. Next on the docket. We're going to talk about 9 music theory concepts every guitar player should know. This is the guitar player episode. I'm sure everybody out there is just thrilled. But really, a lot in that story was talking about exactly this. You hit that plateau, you get stuck, you're not sure where to turn, Well, this would be my advice to you as a guitar player. One G man to another. For all the Half-Life fans out there. So, in no real particular order, but all these things are very important that you should figure out on the guitar. So, if you are a guitar player and you feel like you are stuck, you've hit that plateau, you can't quite progress, and you're not even sure where to turn, you gotta beef up that music theory skills, son. And these are the ways that you should go about it. 9 music theory concepts every guitar player should know. So number 1, the chromatic scale. Now, this is like the absolute basic foundation of all of our Western music theory. With a major scale, which, you might know if you've been kind of beginning to get into a bit of music theory. That's got the 8 notes. Chromatic scale has 12. If you go from like a low E string, open, hit it, boom, and then you go all the way up to the 12th fret and play that E, that's like the entire chromatic scale. So the space of one semitone is 1 fret. So get really familiar with the chromatic scale. That's the musical alphabet. It's got every single note contained within it. And when you start to learn it, every string, start to move them around a little bit on strings, a really good exercise as part of your warm-up is to do chromatic scale exercises. They're not just good for warming up your fingers because you're playing every single fret and you're moving around and shifting a little bit, and so it's warming up your tootsies here. But really, it's also very good for awareness of the fretboard. A really good exercise is you start on a low note, maybe the open E or maybe an F or an F sharp or a G, and then you try and play the chromatic scale whichever way. It doesn't have to be all the way across, but you want to try and get all the way up to the high note on the high E string. So if you start on low E, you try and get all the way up so that your pinky finger hits that high E, or some finger hits that high E on the high E string on 12th fret. You get what I'm talking about? So you're just freewheeling, playing however you want to try and get there, but you play to a metronome. You try and stay in that pattern. If you're doing 8th notes, and you make the call when you want to shift, when you want to cross strings, but you gotta try and get all the way to the high note. So you're going up like 2 or 3 octaves, and then you play it however you want back down. It gives you a bit more awareness about moving around on the fretboard, but it also kind of, you are consistently painting yourself into a corner and you have to instantly problem solve on the fly. So you gain a really good visualization of the fretboard, and it also helps to kind of like, whoop, okay, you're under the gun. Like, you gotta figure it out and make that jump and figure out where to go next. It's a really good exercise. It's a really good brain warm-up, finger warm-up, and it really helps solidify the idea of the chromatic scale for the guitar. So number 2, learning intervals, and specifically what those intervals look like on the frets. So an interval, obviously, is a distance between 2 notes. So we've talked a bit about, like thirds, major thirds, a perfect fifth, stuff like that. You really need to start to visualize what those intervals look like on the guitar. And they can look a few different ways. I mean, you could go up a major third on one string. What does that look like? If you were to play a major third across two strings, what would that look like? And then, of course, the bane of all guitar players, the B string is tuned slightly differently than all the rest. Every string on the guitar is tuned in fourths. That B string is tuned in a third. So you start to visualize how patterns work everywhere, and then you get to those two strings, and it throws you off your game. So you learn what a major third, a minor third, a perfect fifth looks like on all these other string sets, and then you got to be aware of what it looks like on those two strings because it's different. So even like skipping strings, what does a perfect fifth look like, you know, between an E and an A string and an E and a D string? This really helps clarify, again, the visualization of the fretboard and having an idea of where your note choices are. If you're going to make these types of leaps around, you want to know where you're going to go and have a good idea of whether it's going to be a good choice for the situation or not. So intervals around the guitar neck. Very important. Number 3, the major scale. I mean, if you're not learning about the major scale already, you really should be getting the idea of that like whole step, half step, you know, a half step or a semitone is just one fret on the guitar. A whole step or a whole tone is a leap, you know, 2 frets. So you start getting that pattern of the major scale, where it's like tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, and moving that around. Learning it on 1 string, learning it on 3 strings, learning it playing just 1 note per string, like trying to figure out all the different ways that you can get that pattern across of the major scale on the fretboard. Because you don't want to get stuck in patterns. Again, it's very easy to just look and say, oh yeah, it's the patterns. You want to know the notes that you're playing. You want to be able to identify where you can go. As soon as you put 1 note down, 1 finger down on the fretboard, you have to have like that Terminator vision turn on where it's like, meow, and you can see all of your best choices and be able to make that best choice from all of the different choices that you have. So learning the major scale, and more importantly, learning the formula of the major scale. That tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. So number 4, learning your major and minor chords. You can start with just the triads. It's the idea of learning that visual pattern of intervals. This is now stacking intervals together to make a chord. You got to be able to kind of throw that down and again, learn them on different sets of strings, see what that shape looks like, get those sounds under your ear. And it's a big thing for the ear, really. Just starting with a major and minor triad, which is, 3 notes. It's 1 note different, and it's like slightly different. You're moving that middle note, the 3rd, down by 1 fret, and it becomes a minor chord. So cycling through these different chords and starting to hear the difference between what is a major sound and what is a minor sound. What's a major third? What's a minor third? And beyond those intervals, like, what does it sound like when the 5th, the root and the 5th stay the same, and then the note in the middle is the one that's changing? Like, you'll probably be able to hear that it's different, but recognize what these things sound like when you throw another note into the mix. Sometimes your ear gets a little jumbled up. So taking the time to really learn the distinction, not just with your hand, but with the ear. Number 5, learning chord formulas. Chord formulas, you say? Yes, chord progression formulas, but this is for a major key. So when you have a major scale, you line your notes up like C in the key of C major. We've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And we were just talking about building triads. Well, chords are built from every other note. So we'll have a C major, we'll have a D minor, we'll have a E minor, and so on and so forth. So the idea that every major scale will have these notes in a certain pattern, you can learn a formula for what notes will have what type of chord, major, minor, dominant 7, or diminished. So the major key chord formula will be 1 major or 1 major 7, 2 minor 7, 3 minor 7, 4 major 7, 5 dominant 7, 6 minor 7, and 7 minor 7 flat 5. When you get that, you can take any chord progression into any key and you can transpose it like that. Because it doesn't matter what the note names are. If you have a progression that's, 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, and it's, you can put it in the key of C, you can put it in the key of G, what chords are going to be major or minor are going to be determined by those numbers, where they are relative to the tonic, the note that is the key center. So if you're trying to figure out and juggle, like, you don't want to be me in that guitar test scuffling because I didn't understand how this truly worked, right? Like, you can grab that stuff right out of the air and do it so effortlessly. And it will only help you to be more authoritative on your instrument. But beyond that, it's really, really helpful for memorizing songs. So number 6, now we've got the minor key chord formula. So this one, I'm actually going to pull this book out again. So we've got, I'll pull a picture up, but the white balance will be off, so it really doesn't matter. In the book, we've got it separated between major keys and minor keys for chord progressions. Now, why is that? Well, minor keys come in a couple different varieties. You can use the natural minor scale, natural minor being, made of the major scale, just starting on the 6th scale degree. Or there's other minor scales that you can build chords from just like you did in the major scale. Now, the fact that these are different scales with different scale patterns to the major scale, then that means when you start stacking thirds to build chords from them, then you get completely different wacky chords on different degrees of the scale. So for natural minor, you get 1 minor, 2 diminished, flat 3, obviously because that's the minor note, 4 minor, 5 minor, flat 7 major, or flat 6 major, sorry, and flat 7 dominant 7. So, the notes are kind of shifted, and it gives you a different approach to the chords. So this is going to be one of the next theory videos we're going to do, so we can talk a bit more about the wonders of scale degrees. in minor keys, but it's something that, maybe you're just starting out the idea of these chord formulas and you're like, oh, okay. You wouldn't have known that there's a separate one for minor keys. And there's a couple different ones because there's a couple different minor scales. So again, helps you for memorizing songs. If you know that it's in a minor key, you're going to switch gears and think about a different chord formula. And the different types of chords that you could be using in certain situations. Just helps clean things up a bit. So number 7, I've already mentioned this in a couple of the explanations, but scale degrees. Super, 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 super important scale degrees. For some of the reasons that I've already said, where if you're learning something, if you have those numbers instead of all these different possibilities of letter names for the notes that it could be, it's so much easier. You can memorize it. You can see patterns a bit more clearly. So scale degrees are very simply just what degree of the scale that a note is on. What interval away from the root note or the tonic note is it? Is it a fifth? Is it a third? Having that number tells you a lot about how that note is going to behave. And it's also going to tell you quite a bit about how a chord based on that note is going to behave, based on, the chord formula things we were just talking about. Number 8, we had a video all about this a couple weeks ago, the cycle of fourths and the cycle of fifths. This is a really huge thing that helps you to kind of navigate around the guitar. And one big reason why it's a huge help for guitar players is because when you can think in fourths and fifths, then you can really quickly pick out what notes are going across the fretboard. Because like I just said, the guitar is tuned in fourths. So you know how fourths move, you get an idea of that interval, then you can pick any fret, and then okay, a D on the low E string on 10th fret, then it's just like boop, 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 and all those notes fill in because you know exactly what's across. So that's a guitar specific thing. Beyond that, the cycle of fourths and cycle of fifths is just a really important way to move around in music. It gives you the key centers. We talked about all this in the video, but the cycle of fourths and cycle of fifths is a very important musical concept that will really, really save your butt in a lot of different situations. And rounding out the list at number 9, inversions. It is too tragic when a guitar player will learn a chord, they'll get it from some guitar tabs, and then they're just stuck with it. Anytime there's a C, they play that same C chord. Anytime there's an E, they play that same E. The thing is, it's not always appropriate. Just because it says E doesn't mean that, if you were using 3-note chords, triads up to a certain point, and then you get an E minor and you just go and wail an open E minor chord because that's the only one that's going to be really different. And it's noticeably different. You're throwing more notes into your arrangement of your playing. So now you're out of your lane. Like if you're playing in a band and you're kind of keeping it to a little bit of this rhythm, and then you give like a huge open chord, maybe the keyboard player was playing in that range of notes and they're kind of like giving you a look like, what the hell, man? Like you didn't need to play all that notes. You're taking up some of my sonic sound. It muddies up the sound of the band when you can't really be sure about what notes you're just throwing randomly into your chords. adding and taking them away at will without really thinking about the overall like arrangement of what you're playing. So in comes inversions, which we have also talked about pretty recently. The idea that if you have a note, let's say a C major triad, C, E, G, all you really do is you just move the bottom note, C, all the way up to the top. And then you get E, G, C. And then you can take that E and move it all the way up to the top, and you get G, C, E. The idea is that you keep stacking the notes, almost like building like a Jenga tower or something, you know? Taking from the bottom, move it to the top. You get a different formula of intervals within the chord, so they interact slightly differently. So it's almost like you're playing a different chord, even though it's the same notes. So you can get a lot more mileage out of one chord by being able to cycle through inversions while that is the chord that's in play. And on top of that, if you find yourself in a situation where maybe you're running out of a bit of room, you don't have to just, oh man, I don't have enough space to like fit that note in there. Well, you play an inversion. There's different ways that you can fit. It's like figuring out the best way to put your Tetris pieces down. You're just switching your block around. That's the same as a chord inversion, really. So getting familiar with the notes in your chords and how you can stack them, and being familiar with those different inversion shapes for your major, minor, whatever chords and everything like that. That, super, super, super important. So that was 9 music theory concepts every guitar player should know. And probably shouldn't have 2 lists together, but here's just another list. We've got 10 more ways for you to make some music money. This is part 2. Obviously, you don't want to rely on only one way of making your income. How many people were doing that at the start of the pandemic, and then they couldn't play shows anymore? They couldn't be in public, and then they lost all of their income. From one day to the next, something unexpected happened. It changed everything, and then an entire industry of people had to scramble to figure out what they were going to do. So you don't want to get caught like that. You don't want to get caught in a trap. You want to be able to diversify your income streams in as many ways as possible. So here's 10 more ways for you to make money as a musician. So starting at number 1, have vinyls for sale. Surprise, vinyl came back with a vengeance. It is more likely by probably 100 times that someone will buy a record over a CD. Cars don't even have CD players anymore. Like that's gone. Crazy thing to think about, when like a car with a CD player was like amazing back in the day. Now they don't even have them. All the music is going digital, and people will stream your music. So like having digital downloads and stuff, like people might buy it, but having an actual vinyl, it's almost like there's a resurgence of appreciating the actual packaging. Having an art piece, having something that's collectible, you put it on the shelf, being able to attract a buyer who wouldn't buy, a CD, and who would just probably stream your music for practically free, will end up paying a premium for a premium product. So do your due diligence. Like, there has to be a specific like mix and master process that goes into selling vinyl. But a lot more distributors and pressing plants are opening up, and they're expanding to try and take more orders because more people are going along with this. So I think it's a really good idea if you're not selling vinyls of your music and your albums anyway, get on this. Number 2, record a cover song. What? Record music that's not my own? Well, there are a few websites where you pay a little bit of money and you get access to use the license for a song. You don't own that song. That's true. So part of the royalties will go to the original song writer or the song rights holder. But when you record that song, that's a mechanically different version than the original. So that sound recording gets you a royalty. There is some money that will go to the original songwriter, but because you recorded that song, you get a little bit of cash for it. And especially when you're not really sure which of your songs are going to be the one that you're going to put out, there have been many bands that have led with cover songs first because it was already proven like, oh, so this song is popular, or this is a good song that I really like from somebody that, you know, I'm a fan of. So you do a cover, you try and make it your own, you know, do something different with it. But that's just another way that you can put something into your repertoire and actually get a little bit of income coming back from it. Number 3, start a music school or a summer music school, teaching lessons online. Especially in the summer, you know, there's kids are like running around driving their parents crazy. They want something to have them occupied with. I mean, now with school openings and people going or not going, it's kind of up in the air. A lot of school music programs are getting the kibosh, which is really unfortunate. So this is a big one because there are a lot of people out there that don't want their kids to lose out on that. The school boards are dropping the ball because they don't have the money to keep these things going. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. People don't have an appreciation for music when it comes to the finances. But this is an opportunity for you. You have the knowledge, so put it to work. You can do it over the computer. You can stream your lessons and have people pay for a subscription even, like something on Twitch. Or you can just set up a simple website and do Zoom meetings. Easy peasy. It's a really good way to just take a part of your skill and use it to make a little more income. Number 4, I don't know so much about creating an app, but getting your music on an app, something that incorporates your music. There are royalties for that. There are people that are looking for that sort of thing. You know, you could get a percentage of every time that app is downloaded, things like that. And that's one that's kind of outside of the box. You wouldn't have really thought of something like that, but they need music, and you're a musician, so, oh, how about that? Put that together. Number 5, I don't want to really have you rely on this, but there are people that still want to go this route, record labels. You will have to do a ton of the legwork for them to be able to pick you up. However, if you are in a position, like maybe from a very understanding and professional indie label that treats their artists well, they'll give you advances on your projects. So that way, you know, you have a deal worked out with them. You are able to get money in advance to start your work. Me personally, I'm not super huge on going and, oh, please save me, get me signed. But that is an option. And there are probably local record labels that would be able to help you out a lot better than a much bigger business entity really would. Number 6, produce music recordings for other musicians. You have been playing music, you've been writing songs, maybe you know your way around computer recording software. People don't always have those skills or aren't as familiar with it yet. So it doesn't have to be your music. Maybe you use your skills and what you know about songwriting and music to help somebody else with their music. It's weird that the idea of producer is just like, oh, I make beats. That's kind of what it's been reduced to. It's not necessarily just that. The idea of a producer is you get the vision of the artist to happen. You talk with them, you converse with them, they tell you, I want to get at this, I'm kind of inspired by this, I'm kind of hearing this, but I'm not sure what I want it to be. And then you work with them to make that vision happen. It's a very rewarding experience, and you might be surprised at how good you are at it. You don't know until you try, but it's a really interesting aspect of collaboration. It doesn't have to be we write songs together. It could be they have a song, it's not quite complete yet, or maybe it's complete, but you can poke holes in it pretty easily, and you can take a good song and make it a great one in this type of a collaboration. And not to mention, people really like it when you make their stuff way better than it was. They're happy with the result, you know? So that's something that can sometimes pay a premium. So this is something that you definitely want to watch out for. Number 7, record backing tracks and sell them online. This is a really good way of learning music, playing to backing tracks and stuff. So if you know how to play what would be in a backing track, people are looking for that. So that's just a resource that you can create and sell, especially in like jazz and stuff, because people need to play over that stuff ad nauseum to get used to playing those chord changes. But there's all kinds of different ways that you can do. Also, people are just looking for really simple beats or whatever, or license-free music and stuff for their videos. So that's the exact same type of thing. You put your backing tracks or your recordings out there, build a simple website, let the word get out. Hey man, you want some music, some simple stuff? I got it right here. Number 8, compose music for theater. You are not going to get a Broadway musical out of the gate. I mean, let's be realistic here. But there is always going to be local theater, people trying to put together plays or musicals or whatever. So reach out in your community and ask people if they need help with anything. Because again, you can make a pretty penny and it is rewarding work. It's probably a little different than what you're used to, but working outside of your comfort zone is only going to give you a bunch of new skills that you wouldn't have otherwise had. Number 9, looking at this and realizing like this got on the list without me vetting it too hard. Number 9, play music on a cruise ship. You know, I urge caution with this one in 2020. But let's say in the near future, things start to go back to normal and it's okay to be in enclosed spaces with each other for prolonged periods of time. I have many friends that have done contracts playing music on cruise ships. Some people have gone for a couple of weeks. Some people have gone for a month. Some people have done like 5-6 month tours. Some people have been like back home twice in 3 years, you know? Some people just find that right crew and that right ship, and they love what they do. Apparently, it's a really good way to save money because you're on the ship. It's also a really good way to get really good at your instrument because there's nothing to do but practice. So if that's something that you could do, there are some great opportunities. Maybe consider your safety. I'm not telling you it's the best idea right now, but if we get things a little back into the green zone in terms of social distancing requirements, then this is a pretty good and exciting way to earn a bit of cash. And number 10, rounding out the list here, licensing your music. If you get your music in the hands of a distributor or a publisher, then they can help find opportunities for you to, say, get in a commercial. So just like every time your song is played on the radio, and just like every time that your song is streamed or played on YouTube, every time that it is in a movie, every time it's in a commercial, you get royalties for it. So for smaller commercials, maybe it would be better to take the payment up front, get a little bit of money. But putting yourself out there, you never know what you're going to get. A band that we played with a few years ago, Bright Light Social Hour, when the Switch came out, one of their songs got on a Nintendo Switch commercial. That would have been some big royalty money because that thing was being played all the time on TV and on YouTube ads and everything. I saw it all the time, and they would get a cut of that because of their licensing deal. So very much consider that, but always, look into it, read the fine print. Like, don't just sign a deal just because you're like, oh, I got a commercial, sick. Like, be very smart. Do your due diligence. Don't ever give your stuff away without really, being sure on all the details. Maybe even looking into having a lawyer look at something if it's a bigger deal that you're closing. So that's 10 more ways to make money with your music mush mouth marbles. Okay. Oh, farts. I did a silly thing, and I forgot to grab the record for today. So hold on 1 second. And through the magic of editing, he was never even gone. Today's record selection. Billy Joel, The Stranger. This, I mean, I'd probably say this about all of them, but this is one hell of an album. I don't know how many had come out before this, but there had been some success with, I believe, the previous album. This might be the third or fourth. But he had a bit of a hit with Piano Man. So, you know, he's getting more money to do recording and a little more leeway from the record company because he's proven himself as, you know, that's a really popular song and everything. So, I mean, this is just like an eponymous Billy Joel album. Really creepy record cover there. But I mean, it's got Moving Out. Anthony's song is Moving Out. The Stranger, Just the Way You Are, Scenes from an Italian Restaurant, Vienna, Only the Good Die Young, She's Always a Woman. Like, I mean, the other two songs are pretty good, but all those songs were hits. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of 9 tracks on this album were like hits. Like you've heard them on the radio and they would have been on the charts, possibly all at the same time. So this bad boy just like launched him into superstardom. And whether you like Billy Joel or not, these are really well constructed songs. The guy knows his way around the piano, not just in terms of like pure shred and like that piano. It's not quite a solo, but it's just that piano centric part in Scenes from an Italian Restaurant where he's, you know, he's doing the octaves. You know, that's not easy to play. And he's singing while he's doing it. Like, the guy is very, very talented. And there's a really New York, obviously, flavor to this. Like, that's kind of stereotypical, I guess, and that's a bit of a cliche but this is anthems of New York, like especially Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. Like it just, you feel like someone is telling you stories about New York at that time. There's just something about it. You can smell the wine and this garbage sewer smell and subway and everything, and you just feel like you're in that zone. He really perfectly encapsulates that feeling and that time, and just so much good musicianship on this album. He had a great band. All these guys were killer. I believe famed session saxophonist Alto Reed is on this album, makes an appearance. Man, it just, the lyrics, the vocal power of Billy Joel when he's in his prime, and just the songwriting, so good. And again, it's really like it's not straight up rock record. That he went for that on Glass Houses because people were kind of saying this and that about, oh, there's too many ballads. So he, you know, a bit more rock tracks and trying to go for it. But it's like, it's not so bad that they're ballads. Like, it doesn't have to be 110% all the time. And I feel like this is one of those albums where, like, he got the balance really right. And, yeah, it's just a really good flow. All around, excellent songs. If you're looking for something to study, this is an album that you definitely want to check out. Like I always say, whether you're a fan or not, whether you like it or not, just give it a listen. See if there's something that you can learn from it. Especially if you're like, this isn't for me. Well, what don't you like about it? And is there anything that you could kind of salvage from that? If you're like, I would never choose outright to listen to this, but these chord changes are really cool. This melody is really cool. That's a cool kind of shuffle rhythm. I'm going to learn that, you know? Always be looking for something that you can take away and learn from. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our theory subject for today, which is chord functions. Now, you might say chord functions. What I mean, chords are chords, right? You play melody over them. But we talk a lot about the importance of scale degrees because these things will react differently based on their position, their interval away from the key center. And chords are no different. And when you can get to the bottom of what a chord's job is, then you can really reduce a lot of the chords down so that it doesn't matter what chord's being played. It's more like, what job are you supposed to be doing musically, which can completely change your approach to writing melodies or putting together chord progressions or improvising. Huge difference. So let's talk chord functions. We will bring up our keyboard of knowledge here. Doot. There you go. Now, if we were to say line up a major scale, like C major, we've got all the notes here, and we know about building chords from every other note in the scale, triads. So we know we can also do this for every single note in the scale, and that's how we get the chords of a major key. For this particular one, we're going to be working with a little extra note on there, seventh chords. Makes things a little more complicated, maybe, but I feel like seventh chords add a lot more variety and help to really solidify this by showing more difference in the different types of chords. You'll see what I mean later. So if we were building chords off of each scale degree there, we've got C, that's 1. So 1 is C major. We move over to number 2, which is D minor 7. And we've got 3, E minor 7. 4, F major 7. 5, G dominant 7. 6, A minor 7. And 7, B minor 7 flat 5. So you could see there was major minor chords, but then there was that dominant 7 and the B minor 7 flat 5. We get those because we made the 7th chords. So it's more helpful in getting these different types of chords happening. So here's an important thought here. All those 7 chords, when used, tossed around, you might be looking at a chord chart and being like, geez, like, how am I ever going to remember this? How am I going to approach soloing something? You know, maybe like a jazz tune where there's lots of chords. Well, you can really start to analyze the tune and break them down into 3 different functions. So our first function of chord types is tonic. So what tonic is, this is our key center. This is our home foundation. Your tonic chords really let you release the tension from a chord progression. This is home. This is the release. This is resolution. This is, Yes, we've landed somewhere and it feels complete. Or we've set the key up and this is getting our ears used to how this sounds. So the tonic chords in the key of E major would be 1 major 7, that's C major 7, C, E, G, B. 3 minor 7, E, G, B, D. And 6 minor 7, A, C, E, G. Now you might be thinking, well, hold on a sec. How can those have the same function if they're minor chords and major chords? Well, let's take a peek and I'll show you why all three of these chords have the same function. So we've got our C, E, G, B in the 1 chord. We've got E, G, B, D in the 3 chord. And we've got A, C, E, G in the 6 chord. So between those 3 chords, there are at least 3 notes that are shared by one or the other. So the 1 chord has a very close relationship to the 3 chord, and it also has a very close relationship to the 6 chord. They share a bunch of the same notes. And looking at it, I mean, you could start from A and go C, E, G, B, D, and you're still just building up in thirds like it was a chord. So because there are so much similarities between them, this tonic chord, which really should just be the 1 chord, that's our home chord, that's the major key. Well, you can use the 3 or the 6 in place of a 1. It'll give the same feeling of resolution or completion, or, you know, maybe you don't want to go final with a chord progression and you don't want to have full release yet, and you can go for a 3 minor 7 chord. Or maybe you want to switch to a minor key. A really good way to do that is to set up like you're going to go to C major, but you play an A minor instead. It still feels like, oh yeah, this is where we're supposed to go, but it's a completely different chord, so it offers a different feeling, and yet has the same job. It's wild. But it's a really good technique to be able to use. So tonic chords are 1 major 7, 3 minor 7, and 6 minor 7. So now our next chord function is dominant function. You may have heard of a dominant chord before. They're pretty important because of their relationship and how they react with the 1 chord. So we've got 5 dominant 7, G, B, D, F. The 5 dominant 7 chord is really important because of that B. That's what we call the leading tone. In the key of C, it's B, and it's 1 semitone away. So it's right beside going home, back to that key center. So when you play a dominant 7 chord, that B wants to resolve to that. And because it's like a weird interval between that B and F, it creates instability and it wants to move 1 away. So there's a lot of tension. So when you go from a 5 dominant 7 to a 1 chord, or any tonic chord really, it's a nice resolution. But here's another silly thing. Yeah. 7 minor 7 flat 5 is a dominant functioning chord. And you may say, well, wait a second. That dominant chord has a dominant function, obviously, but this one isn't a dominant chord. But again, one, the leading tone of B in the key of C, so it wants to go, and that awkward flat 5 interval between the B and F creates that instability, so it wants to resolve itself. And on top of that, if we look at the notes in G, B, D, F, and then we throw on that 7 chord, B, D, F, A, we've got 3 of the same notes. Are you starting to get a bit of what I'm getting at here? These functions start to act as the same chord. So when you start thinking about it, oh, they have a lot of the same notes. Yeah, they're interchangeable. 1, 3, and 6 can be chosen anytime. They can be interchanged. Same with 5 and 7. They can be interchanged. Because those notes are shared. So they have the same type of job. They have the same kind of function. And when you start realizing that, then you start seeing that bigger picture. The whole musical world opens up and you get that moment where you're like, wait a second. It really is all tension and release. That story Dan was telling us about how he had that revelation and it was like shooting through your universe. This is it. It all comes down to these functions. The rest of the stuff doesn't really matter. When you start seeing the bigger picture, you look at a progression, you know what key it's in, you know the chords, and then you can start to spot, well, this is on this scale degree, so it's this job and whatever. All these calculations run through your head really fast when you get this under you. But then you see it for what it is. So you're not reacting one at a time, you're reacting to the bigger picture based on the function. So our final function here is subdominant. And this is the transitory, the in-between. You know, they're not our tonic chords, they're not home bass, but they don't have that strong of destabilizing or the need for resolution like the dominant chords do. They're in between. So they are subdominant. Subdominant chords are the 2 minor 7. So we've got D, F, A, C. And 4 major 7, F, A, C, E in the key of C. And once again, got same jobs being held by major and minor chords. And it is for the same reason that we've already shown. D, F, A, C on one chord, the 2 minor 7. And F, A, C, E on the 4 major 7. They've got 3 of the same notes that are shared. So really, when you start looking at progressions, really try and suss this out. Do a bit of analyzing. And try and figure out which ones are tonic, subdominant, and dominant. And it might kind of start to shift how you approach playing these chords. Because again, there's bigger picture, and when you have these why, you know, there's a purpose behind this. There's a job that's supposed to function in this way. Now you're going to start thinking about that, and you're going to start playing differently. You're going to start writing differently. It's always about the bigger picture, isn't it? And when you know how a chord is supposed to be functioning, it changes everything. And that is chord functions. I hope you learned something today, because I sure did. And now we're going to go into the images. This is just a silly meme about, you know, playing in an ensemble or playing in an orchestra. Oh, you need to play more musically. Plays the exact same while swaying the body to seem musical. Ah, much better. it's meant to, take the piss out of the person who's directing the ensemble or whatever. But there is something to be said about you and what you put into your instrument. Because you may feel like you're playing it the exact same, but when your body is getting into the music, you're going to approach it differently. When you're in the music, when you're in the moment, when you are putting yourself into part of the performance, that changes the performance. Now, don't go out of your way to try doing backflips or something stupid like that, obviously, because that might take away from it. But the idea is that you and your instrument are the instruments. So when you can put yourself into the performance, that will obviously have an impact on it. So feeling, letting yourself go dig deeper and physically be the music, maybe that will lead to a more musical result. What we got next here? A classic. This is from 2011. And it's a few of the guys from the Mohawk Beatles ensemble. We had a ton of fun. As you can see, we're giggling and laughing. This was a great gig because we were at the Winking Judge in Hamilton, and that was one of our favorite watering holes at the time. But it is a pub, like it is a small pub. So that front room there isn't much bigger than what you're seeing. We crammed all of our gear into that room, and then we had a horn section and a few strings. And they're standing in the background where some of those girls are with the music stands. They were lined up the stairs. It's just out of frame there. But we had a horn section positioned on the stairs. This whole setup was whacked, but it actually kind of added to the show. There's people crammed in. There were so many people there, and they were right in the band, So we played a bunch of different tunes, and one of my favorite parts was we were playing Penny Lane. And if you're familiar with the song, you know that there is it's a piccolo trumpet solo in the middle. It's pretty iconic, but you could tell people who were familiar with the song were kind of looking around and being like, well, who's going to play that? And the leader, Darcy Hepner, was sitting in the crowd with his sopranino saxophone. It's very, very tiny. And he literally just pulled it out from a jacket and started playing in the middle of the crowd. It was nuts. And it was just a really good time. And you could tell it was a special show. Obviously, we weren't going to be doing this all the time, but we were friends with the owner. We really, really liked the place. We were all huge fans of the music. And it was just a type of show that not a whole lot of people will really get to experience. So, you could tell people in the crowd were just really, really into it, and they knew that it was a very special thing. So it was an awesome, awesome experience to be a part of. Plus, I miss being able to go to places like that and hang and have laughs like that with my buddies. I miss it terribly. And here's a nice memory. Also, let's see, was this 2000? This was 2012, actually. So many, many years ago. But a few buds from music school and some of my buddy Aaron there's family. It's Aaron and Joel. Great dudes. I love them. Absolutely love those dudes. Good hang. But we had rented a cottage in Nova Scotia. We had rented it months and months before, after a bit of searching, and we put deposits down and everything. And then we got some troubling news from the owner who said that they went to open up the cottage from the winter. They had had people stay there over the winter and they completely trashed the place. And then the email went on to say that they were going to upgrade us at no extra cost. So we stayed in this amazing, like, huge mansion, and it's right on the cove in Nova Scotia. So that's like ocean water. And you could tell because it was freezing. And this is like mid-August. But we still went swimming anyway because it was fun. But this was just such a great time. And I really love this picture because, we get so caught up in music. And it's unfortunate because a lot of gigging generally happens on the weekend. It's party time, right? So a lot of our chances to relax are actually when we're at work and we're doing the stuff for people who are out having their relaxing time. So having getaways like this was actually really, really important. We weren't always thinking of it. It had to be somebody smart enough to have the foresight and be like, hey, we're going to book something, because musicians don't think about taking a break for themselves and they often burn out. And this was definitely what we all needed. It was so relaxing. And, we would sit with the windows open, have a few brews and whatever else happened, and play board games. We had Risk going there, and nobody killed each other over Risk, but it was close. And we also had a Scrabble set, but it was in Dutch. So all the letter combinations and points were different, and there were some weird things happening, but it made for a challenging experience. It was pretty fun. But always be sure to take care of your mind and your emotional state by making time to just relax and step back, enjoy time with your friends, go somewhere cool, splurge a little if you have to, but being able to go and have these experiences traveling and relax and do fun things with friends, it creates a lot of memories. So it's like a healthy thing beyond even just being there and relaxing. Like, I always think back on these times fondly. And of course it was haunted. And I'm not kidding. There was some weird stuff going on. I mean, that's the end of the images. I'll blurb on a little extra about that because I'm not going to just leave you hanging. I haven't told that story in quite a while, but so it was this old, or not an old, it was like new. Sorry. So we got the new mansion on the cove in Nova Scotia, which, like, I had never been before then. And I've got two or three big trips of like driving all the way across most of the country. We went all the way out west to, we drove up to Squamish, and then we got to do this trip out to Nova Scotia. And, Canada is just such a beautiful, beautiful country. Every single province is gorgeous. But I was really happy to get to go and spend some time in Nova Scotia. If anybody listening or watching is from that province, like, you guys know what is up. That place is really chill and simple, and like going into the small towns and talking with people and everything. It was wonderful. And it's just such a gorgeous environment. So we pull up to this mansion and we're losing our minds. Like, we're laughing because it's so big. And the setup was kind of weird. Like, there was just, I don't know, different compartments of the house. And one of the first weird things that we noticed was we went upstairs and we were checking out all the cool rooms. Oh, this is awesome. And then we realized that there's another staircase and it just goes up to one door and the door is locked. So we're like, okay, maybe that's their special room. Maybe it's a sex dungeon, like whatever, you know. And then we were poking around down in the basement, and someone was like, "Oh, there's a like our own separate bathroom down here. Like, I'll just set up my inflatable mattress and a sleeping bag. Like, I'm fine with that." And there was like this smaller door, and we opened it, and it was like a root cellar. Like, it was really old, gray, exposed, almost kind of crumbly brick, and there were stairs. We didn't know where those stairs went. We didn't find any other door that went to those stairs. But we looked at it, and I looked at my buddies, and I was like, no, fuck that. I'm not going in there. So we were laughing because we were like, that's, if you've ever seen that episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? I think it was one of the first episodes where that kid, they move into a mansion, and they finds that closet door, and every time he opens it and plays music, there's this creepy like eyes, and it's like, feed me, and it grants him wishes when he kills the bully, locks him in there. It kind of reminded us of that, so we were like, nope. And we closed the door, and the door locked, so we couldn't get back in that door to tell the other people that were there with us, like, there's this freaky room with stairs. We don't know where the stairs go. Like, I don't know. It was fucked. So we're joking about the creepy stairs and all that stuff. And it was a pretty uneventful first night. Like, we were pretty tired from the drive and everything. But we were saying, like, we should have a scary movie night, and we should watch it in the scary basement. Because we were talking about the spooky room, and it's the scary basement. We'll set up a super bed, get all our stuff together, and just watch a spooky movie down in the basement. So we go down there, and there were dead bugs all over the carpet. All of them dead. Within a day. Like, that's what doesn't make sense, because we went down there when we were looking at the spooky room and checking everything out. We would have noticed the number of dead bugs that were on this carpet. They weren't there. In fact, the house was completely cleaned by a cleaning crew. There were really big spiders, like, just like dead. Like, all kinds of different bugs just all over there, and they were dead. So we did not watch a spooky movie down there, because that was kind of gross. But we were like, okay, that's kind of weird. And so the guy Nick, he was like, oh man, I'm not sleeping down there. There's bugs everywhere. So we were like, well, come sleep in our room. You can put your mattress on the floor. And that night he said that, like, something was going on. He was like, I felt something kind of tugging on the bed or something. Like, it was weird. I don't know what it was, but it felt like somebody was shaking the bed and pulling on it. So he starts telling people, and obviously there's like one or two skeptics that are like, okay, sure. We had somebody like taking like one of the weird statues from the house and putting it in other rooms just to try and fuck with us and make fun of us and stuff. And it was like, something weird was going on. So I also had the bed thing happen to me. Now, I know what small earthquakes feel like. I've been through a few like 4-pointers that were happening around like Ottawa, Hamilton area. And it was a sensation that was barely noticeable, but you felt it. And it was like, okay, like, I know what that feels like. It's very specific. What started happening to the bed was like
exactly how they were describing it. It felt like someone was on the end of the bedpost and was just shaking the bed. And at the same time, something was tugging on my blankets. Which, like, I could see the other two people in the room. And the door was closed. Like, nobody got into the room. Like, I do not know how to explain that. It was so weird. And it didn't stop. Like, if it was just, oh, what? That's crazy. But it was like 20 minutes until I finally was able to force myself to sleep, maybe more. Like, this was continuously happening and it didn't stop. And I had to just, like, pull my blanket up tight and hold it there and just close my eyes and be like, don't pay attention. You can freak out about it tomorrow. So then besides that, there was one thing where, like, we went down, all of us went down to the waterfront. We were exploring the rocks by the cove, and we came back, and a bunch of the pictures were off the wall. That one again, okay, maybe it was the person who was trying to fuck with us. That one could have went through. It was weird, but, you know, maybe someone that could be explained away. But we were all at the waterfront, so it would have been a tough one to pull off. But then there was, like, really weird, like, smears and stuff on the windows that almost looked like a face. And again, like, that wasn't there before. It was a lot to put together if someone had actually, you know, done it. And unlike the thing with the statue or the bear or whatever, nobody admitted to that one with the frames and everything. So we were kind of like, okay, that's messed up. And there was some messed up things that happened, but I was like, it's a brand new building. Like, it can't be that old. Someone would have made this pretty recently. So we looked up some of the history of that particular house. And it was like an old lighthouse and fisherman shack from, like, the late 1800s that was, like, crumbling and stone. And they paved over it, but kept the foundation and built the house. And we saw pictures of it, and that's what was in the basement. That door that was like a cubby door that went to a root cellar, it was that same stone with these weird stone steps that were going up to we don't know where. It wasn't going anywhere outside. We didn't find any doors like that. It was like in the middle of the house. So, I don't know. But you bulldoze a creepy old building and build a mansion over it and use it as like an Airbnb rental. And we don't find out about it until after somebody's shaking my bed, giving me the magic fingers. Thanks for that. So we didn't get an interview today, but that's just a bit of bonus content. My spooky Nova Scotia vacation. So that takes us to the end of the show today. I really appreciate everybody who tunes into these things and shares our content and everything. Don't forget that we will be back again next week with some more excellent information for you. And be sure to bring your friends, bring your family, tell them what's up. You can always find our stuff on the Facebook and Instagram pages and YouTube as well. We put all of our content on there for record keeping. And we also have our podcast episodes go up on Anchor FM. So they get thrown up on Apple and Spotify and a bunch of other things. But you can find absolutely everything on the website, mfile.ca. We've got all kinds of articles, blogs, stuff, talking about mindset, talking about music theory, talking about guitar, talking about marketing. And you can get access to our books, our courses, whatever you want, whatever you can dream. It's all there for you at mfile.ca. So I have been Dan Weiss, owner and founder of mFile Music Theory and Songwriting, helping you become the musician you are supposed to be by creating the music that you hear in your head. We'll see you next week.